Welcome to the 5 Star Flex. I'm your host, Phillip Deuce, aka Deuce D Scoop. Check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Deuce D Scoop. Now, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. But today is a very special edition. Why? Because we're introducing one of my alter egos, and that is Dr. Deuce. That's right. I have a PhD in recruitology. And I know sometimes people say, well, Deuce, he used to cover the Auburn beat and he's super familiar with Auburn, but I take my practice as a PhD recruitologist very seriously. So there will be no homerisms. Not to say that there ever has been, but just so you know, because the first line of business for me as Dr. Deuce is to help diagnose an issue that some people are worried about in the Alabama Crimson Tide fan base. A lot of people want to know, how can Alabama maintain recruiting momentum under new head coach Kalen DeBoer? And I'm here to tell you, it is 1,000% possible. And frankly, I think it can happen. How does Alabama maintain the dominance that they've had over the past, decade and a half almost? And I think there's a few things that you can do. And I have a 5-part prescription in order to make sure that Alabama does maintain their dominance in recruiting. Step number 1, you have got to continue to recruit with the brand. Recruit with the logo. Sometimes it sounds like it's so cliche that people have a brand they recruit behind, or people have a logo. You have some guys that want to recruit aside, a coach. When I say guys, I mean coaches or recruiting staff, where they want to recruit aside from the logo. They want to get away from it. They want to say, you know what, you're coming to the school because of what our relationship means to you, what I can provide. And those guys, sometimes in recruiting circles, those guys end up being star recruiters because in times they make things more about themselves than they do the actual school. The best recruiters recruit next to the logo as saying, hey, I'm a guy that I want to build a relationship with you regardless of the logo. Then you have guys who recruit behind the logo that say, hey, you need to come to this school because of the logo. But the best recruiters are the ones that can combine that. And that's what Alabama's recruiting staff has to do. You have to combine all of those principles and realize that there is no shame in recruiting behind that A. You have to recruit behind the A. Now, build relationships, do all of that. But not so much as just recruiting behind the logo. Recruit behind the standard. The standard that Nick Saban set previously, where it was relentless recruiting. I've talked to multiple coaches at Alabama who said, we never got a day off, or where it was 7 days on, like we never took a break from recruiting. Always ABC, always be recruiting, basically. And it's not that they never got a vacation day. It's the fact that that's how serious it was. Even when you had to talk ball, you had to find out the way to recruit. And I think that's what Nick Saban instilled in his program, and why they were so dominant for so many years. I think that if Kalen DeBoer can maintain the standard of recruiting by saying we're going to be relentless, we're not going to shy away from using a brand, and we're not going to shy away from using Nick Saban's legacy in order to help us recruit, because it's already built. It's like you've got a Ferrari just sitting in the driveway. All you got to do is get in and drive it. Yeah, some people are going to question, have you driven a car like that before? But why not lean into the people that drove the car before you in order to make sure that you are reaching peak performance? And I think that if Kalen DeBoer and company can do that, then they'll be very successful. The second part of my prescription for Alabama football maintaining its recruiting dominance is that you have to land a marquee quarterback in this class. And in order to do that, you're going to have to flip a quarterback. I know a lot of times you want to have your guy, your quarterback, commit to you first, and you ride it out into the sunset and you hold all the other teams off. Well, currently in the 25 class, the top 3 targets that Alabama has are all committed to other schools. When you talk about a Julian Lewis, out of Carrollton. When you talk about a George McIntyre who's committed to Tennessee, and a guy that I particularly think that there's some real interest both ways, and no disrespect to any of the schools that these guys are committed to, but Deuce Knight is another guy who I think that Alabama has some traction with, and that I will watch that going forward. If you can land one of those three, which I think Alabama has a decent shot at. Why? One, you probably have one of the more electric freshmen coming in Ryan Williams. A lot of people that I talked to felt that he was the best high school football player they had ever seen in person. When you talk about a guy who can stretch the field vertically, a guy who can play the slot and make you look silly, he's the type of guy that you can throw him the ball in a phone booth and you still couldn't touch him. That type of guy, that type of electricity in receiver is enough to make a quarterback's job easier. When you take a Ryan Williams and you add him to a Caleb Odom, a 6'4", 6'5" hybrid tight end, move tight end receiver type guy, where his catch radius is insane. Those are things that can be attractive to these type of quarterbacks. So when you look at a guy like Julian Lewis, who has familiarity with the Caleb Odom, why not Bama? When you look at the success that Michael Penix had, and you're a guy like Deuce Knight, whose brother also played for Kalen DeBoer when he was at Indiana, you start to think, why not Bama? When you think about how Alabama has continued to recruit along the offensive line, and even though they lost a monster in Caden Proctor, they still reloaded, and their focus is still in the trenches. And you're a guy like George McIntyre who needs a clean pocket to be successful. You start to think, why not Bama? So as you start to boil all of these things together, you come up with this sort of gumbo that says, you know what? The perfect storm could be brewing. And if Alabama, if I'm one of those three quarterbacks and I think, can I be successful at Bama? Will I have resources at Bama? Will NFL eyes be on me at Bama? Will I be developed at Bama? Will I be protected at Bama? Now, if you have these type of guys thinking that way, if you're Kalen DeBoer, you got to go in and close. So if you can get that marquee quarterback, you 1,000% will continue to maintain recruiting dominance at the University of Alabama. The third thing in my prescription for Alabama being a top recruiting destination, fundraise, fundraise, fundraise. You got to have the bag. I'm sorry. Nick Saban was able to do things previously based on who he was. Now, while in our first set or the first step of the total prescription, so to speak, Dr. Deuce was saying, hey, you got to lean into the Nick Saban era. Well, even though you want to lean into that era is over. It's Kalen DeBoer's time. So with that being said, you're not just going to be able to say, hey, come here because of Coach Saban. There were a ton of players that wanted just to be coached by Nick Saban. So how do you make up that difference? You got to go get a bag. I'm going to tell you something. That rival school, that blue and orange school down the road, outside of Montgomery towards Atlanta, down 85, Auburn University, they are gearing up for war. So if Alabama wants to be competitive and continue to maintain their dominance, they got to protect Alabama. Right now, Auburn is one of the more attractive schools in the Southeast, not just because of what they've done, but who they have the possibility of becoming. So if Alabama wants to maintain that dominance, they have to take the attitude with fundraising as if they don't have all of those championships, as if they don't have the logo, as if they don't have Nike Tech suits, right? They got to act like they don't have these things and fundraise at a clip where Alabama can continue to be competitive when it comes to name, image, and likeness. And I think it's just a part of the game. But I think that if Alabama can nail fundraising, it's going to be hard to turn down that brand, that logo, that offense. And I talked to a guy, a highly sought after free safeties in the country, Lagonza Shady Hayward, the other day. And his eyes lit up when he talked about the defensive system that was coming in.
The whole new defensive scheme that's coming in, that thing is great.
Yeah, you like that one, huh?
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of things going for you. If you can put that with competitive, I'm not telling you that you have to go outbid everybody. You have to be competitive, and you can no longer lean on the fact of guys wanting to play for Nick Saban. But if you can be competitive when it comes to fundraising, I think that will bode very well for Alabama's recruiting prowess going forward. All right, number 4 in the prescription is that you've got to highlight one of the secret weapons of Kalen DeBoer's tenure at Washington, and that's general manager Courtney Morgan. He's a guy from Los Angeles. He's highly relatable. He's the type of guy that you have on campus, and once you've got past the coaches, you may not be able to relate to some of your coaches. Even though you can talk football with them, some of those guys you may not be able to have the same type of relationship off the field that you may want. You may not get that true uncle vibe. You may not get that big brother vibe. Well, Courtney Morgan understands the culture in such a way that there were recruits at Washington that said they went to school for Courtney Morgan. Well-dressed guy, big guy, played the game at a very high level. He's somebody, if I'm Kalen DeBoer, when I get guys on campus, I make sure that he has an opportunity to talk to all of the big guys and all of the guys that we must have on campus. Courtney Morgan is a guy that you have to highlight. And if you give him the proper spotlight with recruits when they get on campus, I 1,000% think that it will be in Alabama's favor. And he's just a key cog when it comes to what Kalen DeBoer does. And I think he'll continue to be that. And as long as he does, and Alabama cannot get in their own way and just utilize the tools that are in front of their face, they'll absolutely continue to be successful. Now, last but not least, the final thing you have to do, and I kind of talked about this in my first step, but the 5th step of my prescription for Alabama to maintain recruiting dominance is to make Nick Saban your best friend. When I said lean on Nick earlier, right, in recruiting, but no, you need to showcase Nick. As much as he wants to be at the game, bring him to the game. As much as he can teach you, try to learn. And I'm not telling you to be Nick Saban, but there's a difference between going in and saying, you know what, I want to get far, far away from what he did. This is a new school. This is Kalen DeBoer's way. This is the new Bama. No, you don't have to be the new Bama. Borrow, treat it like a buffet. Borrow what's good for you. Take the things that work for you. And then everything that's not going to work, you can leave it. I think he's already been doing a heck of a job already. Case in point, being able to keep the 4th quarter workouts that were a staple under the Saban regime, right? At the same time, allowing assistant coaches to talk to the media. That type of balance is what you have to maintain while you're not rubbing a guy like Nick Saban the wrong way, because you're still tipping your hat to some of the things that he's done well by saying, you know what, we want to keep the 4th quarter. So I think that if you can get as many photo ops, have Nick Saban around as much as possible, turn him into he's a celebrity. You and all good schools that recruit, they have former players come back, right? When you see guys, the former players, they are talking about it, they're tweeting about it, they're around the program. I have guys that say, we went to Miami and we saw such and such in the weight room. You go to Michigan, oh, Coach Harbaugh put me on the phone with such and such, such and such. We know that Cam Newton has always been a tool when people use Auburn. The amount of former NFL players that go back to Alabama and talk to the guys and tweet out and are vocal about it, none of them will have as much influence as Nick Saban. So if you can lean on Saban to make him your best friend, then I absolutely think that Alabama will be able to maintain recruiting dominance at the same clip that they have previously. All right, guys, that's my time. Dr. Deuce, if you got a team that you would like for me to set a prescription for, just give me a call. Let me know in the comments, and make sure you like and subscribe. 5-Star Flex, we're out.